Luis Ortiz scores a 7th round TKO victory over Dave Allen. Now, before I get into my review of the fight and my assessment of the performances of both men, I just want to address this whole issue. I mean, it's not really much of an issue, but some people might bring it up, so let me address it with the number of rounds that this fight was actually scheduled for. Because originally, and when this fight was, shortly after the fight was announced, I said in one of my videos that it was an 8-rounder. But in the past couple of days, BoxRec and also the Matchroom website, for some reason, had the fight listed as a 10-rounder. So it looked as though they changed it from 8 to 10. But tonight, obviously, it was 8 rounds again. So I don't know if it was a situation where the people at Matchroom were not sure about how many fights they could fit on the card or how many fights they could actually air. So maybe they were right up until the last minute deliberating whether it was going to be 8 or 10. Whatever the case may be, it turned out to be 8. Now, as far as the performance, I know a lot of people are going to be critical of Ortiz's performance. And in fact, during the actual fight itself, I'm sure there were a lot of people, maybe the majority of people, that were looking at Ortiz and saying, this guy's not even that good. It looked as though this fight was probably going to go the distance, the full 8 rounds, up until maybe the midway part of the 6th, when Ortiz was really starting to unload shots and Allen started to look uncomfortable. And in the 7th, it became apparent, particularly when Dave Allen sagged into the ropes the first time, that Ortiz was probably going to get him out of there. And there was no knockdowns in the fight. Dave Allen, as usual, showed he has a tremendous chin. He shipped a hell of a lot of clean shots from Ortiz and never staggered, really never went down. So he's definitely got a chin on him, the guy. But I think the stoppage was correct. He was being overwhelmed by punches and he probably would have gone down or, would have been totally helpless if the referee hadn't jumped in when he did. So I do think it was a good stoppage. Dave Allen protested, obviously. He don't want to be suspended by the British Board, because that's part of the British Board of Boxing Control protocol. If you have suffered a stoppage or knockout defeat, you're not allowed to fight again for a number of months. So he's obviously not going to be happy about that. And also just for his pride, because he prides himself on being a very tough guy who's never been down before. Well, he's still never been down, although he has now been stopped. He did something, Luis Ortiz did something that Dillian Whyte failed to do. However, one thing I will say is that Dave Allen appeared to be in much better condition against Dillian Whyte than he was here against Luis Ortiz. Even though he took both fights on short notice, he seemed to have kept himself a lot more trim for the Dillian Whyte fight. Here against Ortiz, he did look quite a lot heavier. He didn't look necessarily very fat. He was soft looking, but he certainly was no Andy Ruiz in there. But apart from the fact that he maybe wasn't in as good a shape and maybe didn't quite have the stamina that he had in the Dillian Whyte fight, he actually looked more relaxed to me here against Luis Ortiz than he looked against Dillian Whyte. He was letting his shots go more fluidly and he just seemed more comfortable, particularly in the early rounds. And he did actually land some decent shots on Luis Ortiz. There was a couple of big swinging, clubbing right hands, which he also landed that shot on Dillian Whyte once or twice when they fought. He landed it on Ortiz a couple of times. And he did kind of catch Ortiz's attention when he landed it, because it looked like quite a hefty shot. So some people are going to be criticizing Ortiz's defense for the overhand right. And I think up until the stoppage, there would have been people saying, you know what, Ortiz's power is overrated because he hadn't flattened Dave Allen in a couple of rounds. Apparently, nobody is allowed to have a good chin in the heavyweight division anymore. If you're supposed to be a top heavyweight, there's nobody that's allowed to take your best punches and not go down. If they do, then you obviously can't punch and your power's overrated. That's the way a lot of boxing fans seem to think these days, which is absurd, but it is what it is. Overall, I would assess Luis Ortiz's performance by saying that it was decent, but nothing spectacular. Let me just leave you with this, though. Dave Allen did better against Luis Ortiz. This is a fact now. He did better against Luis Ortiz than Bryant Jennings did. Oh, yeah. So as much as you want to criticize Ortiz's performance, maybe you should actually give Dave Allen a bit of credit, because Brian Jennings is a guy who went 12 rounds with Klitschko and never came remotely close to going down, much less being knocked out. And Luis Ortiz ran straight through him, beat the crap out of him, hurt him in the first round and several times throughout the fight, and knocked him out properly. He didn't do that to Dave Allen. He did stop him, but it wasn't bouncing him off the canvas and having him wobbling around the ring in the first round like he was with Brian Jennings. So you have to give Dave Allen credit for actually doing better than Brian Jennings, who was, at least at the time, a world level heavyweight. So that's my assessment. A decent performance. I thought Ortiz looked cool. And we did learn a few more things about him. He is quite susceptible to a looping right hand, because it's not the first guy that's landed that shot on him. So he is quite susceptible to that shot, but maybe it's when he's not really paying too much attention and he's not really worried about the opposition. He tends to get a bit defensively lax, and things like that can happen with him. When he's more switched on, when he's in there with a better quality guy, I expect lapses in concentration like that to be far less frequent. So let me know what you felt about Luis Ortiz's performance, and who'd you like to see him fight next. There's the possibility of the Shannon Briggs fight. Hopefully that happens. I personally think that fight is actually all right. I definitely expect Ortiz to win, but I think it could be fun while it lasts, because Shannon Briggs is going to come out blasting. So I personally wouldn't mind seeing it for the vacant WBA regular title. Maybe you feel different. However you do feel, let me know in the comment section. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.